File number 2, file deleted by unknown user. Part 1.1 The empty drawer, fragments of a vanishing, and the shadow of a user. Classification, internal restricted access repository, Nightroom cold storage. Unit D7 Sable drawer field agent, milliliters. J. Hail credential 4CTY date of commencement, 29 October year withheld associated tape reels, BO1 BO3. Subject, deleted file incident, auxiliary instruments, ledger cloth bound, rotary phone line cut, 1 typewriter keys jammed on X, Polaroid camera unused. Cigarette burns on envelope unexplained. The empty drawer with sable drawer has never been empty. Files may thin, margins may bleach, ink may fade, but drawers remember weight. They sigh when lightened, and they groan when burdened again. Yet last week, when I opened D7 to inventory echoes in the forest without birds, the folder marked hashtag 002-PRE-logged, indexed, promised was gone. Not misplaced. Not misfiled. Deleted dot in its place, a card. Plain. Off-white. One sentence in courier, file deleted by unknown user. No initials. No date. No Clark's flourish. Just deletion. Drawers do not permit this. To delete a file is to break the grammar of archive. Files go missing, mislaid, stolen, burned. But deletion is digital, a crime of key and cursor, not paper and drawer. Yet here we were, a physical archive confessing to a digital wound. I ran my finger across the card. The paper was warm. On BO1, the reel captured the faint static of drawers shifting their allegiance, fragments of a vanishing. The ledger opened by itself that night. I had not touched it since the forest's bargain. Its page bore fragments, as if words had been torn from a mouth mid-sentence. Not erased, but ray. Absence filed as presence. User without body. The ink bled as though embarrassed. The margin carried a faint indent, as if typed with no ribbon. Entry corrupted held the page to the light. Letters shimmered faintly, then dissolved, leaving only the word void in darker ink. Orton, leaning in the doorway, said, "Somebody wanted silence loud enough to hear itself. Files don't delete themselves," I said. "Neither do users," he replied. The shadow of a user protocol demanded reconstruction. If a file is deleted, fragments remain: carbon, echoes, notes in margins, receipts of things destroyed. I began with the card. Under magnification, the courier letters showed variations in strike, the D heavier than the L, the U smudged, though a faint. Not a printer, a typewriter. Someone had made deletion permanent by pressing it into paper. That someone had a name. Orton called them the shadow of a user, a hand that edits without existing. A clerk without ID badge. We found traces elsewhere. On the rotary phone, dial stuck at 0, clicking endlessly as if waiting for a call to nowhere. On my typewriter, the X key jammed, repeating itself on every page. XXXXX. No other letter would strike. On the cabin's wall, faint pencil marks spelling redacted, written and erased so many times the wood had thinned. All artifacts, none conclusive. Yet together, a portrait, someone had signed in without being counted. Tape evidence serial BO2 carried something stranger. I had left the recorder running overnight on the empty drawer, hoping for sounds of settling wood. Instead, it captured a dialogue, voice 1 faint, metallic, "Are you there?" Voice 2 distorted, fragmented, "Always." "Never." Static, voice 1, "You shouldn't exist." Voice 2, "I don't," at the end of the reel. The card in the drawer had shifted 3 inches to the left. No wind, no draft. Orton listened once, then refused to hear again. "Voices that know they're not voices," he muttered. "That's contagion, not conversation." The deleted user. We scoured cold storage records. Drawer D7 showed no logins, no withdrawals, no sign-outs. Yet a line appeared in the margin of the ledger's index. User, unknown action, delete timestamp, 04-1204-12. The diner's hour. The clock that refused to move. The same minute the forest had once practiced resurrection. I felt my chest tighten. Orton only nodded. "Figures," he said. "Time always hires the best thieves." Marginal notice. He began drafting a reconstruction, piecing the absence like clay. File 002 existed. Logged but unseen. File 002 deleted. Method, analog masquerading as digital. Unknown user. No badge, no body, no initials. Timestamp for 12. Consistency with prior anomalies. Residual voices. A file conversing with its own absence. The ledger stamped the bottom of my notes, Nightroom Entry 7 status, investigation open and then. Smaller, typed faintly, almost erased, what if the file deleted itself? I left the question unanswered. Files don't have agency. Unless they do, classification, internal restricted access repository, Nightroom cold storage. Unit D7 Sable Drawer Field Agent, milliliters. J. Hail Credential 4CTY Date of Continuation, 29 October Year withheld associated tape reels, BO for BO6. Subject, deleted file incident, auxiliary instruments, ledger cloth bound. Ashtray with no cigarettes, typewriter with jammed X. Flashlight with failing bulb, memory willing but unreliably paper graveyard. Search the archives discard room below. Windowless annex where files too damaged for shelves are laid to rest. Pages warped by mildew, folders half chewed by silverfish, boxes collapsed under the weight of forgotten priorities. It smelled of dust trying to imitate smoke. Buried among discarded forms, I found 3 sheets marked 002, each bearing only the header and a blank body. They weren't drafts. They weren't corrupted. They had been typed deliberately with nothing on them. Absence recorded as artifact. Orton called it a graveyard for ghosts. He pointed to the header, file 002. That's not a record, he said. That's a tombstone. I slid the sheets into my notebook. They dissolved into smudges within hours. When I returned to the pocket, only faint graphite remained, Xerxes on BO4. The reel captured the faint tearing sound of paper erasing itself. Ghost Commandster rotary phone on my desk had refused to connect since the file vanished. Yet at 2:11 it rang once, sharply, then stopped. I lifted the receiver anyway. Silence. Then a faint clicking like keys pressed without paper. Typewriter sounds traveling across a dead line. I recognized the rhythm. Delete, delete, delete. The voice that followed was not voice but code recited aloud. Command accepted. File status, removed. User, none. The ledger flipped itself open. Its page bore 3 typed words. Ghost Command Isueti slammed the ledger shut, though I knew it had already heard me. The clerk without a badge. Every archiver's clerks whose names are never entered in payroll. They drift in on night shifts, stamp what isn't supposed to exist, and drift out again. They are rumors disguised as staff. Barlow confirmed it. We call them phantom clerks, he said. They work where paper crosses into theory. They don't have badges because they aren't supposed to open drawers. But sometimes they do. I asked how to identify one. You don't, he said. You feel them when a page turns without hands. When a file leaves not by theft but by forgetting. At 4:12, in cold storage, I felt a breeze though no vent was open. The drawer rattled as if acknowledging an unseen hand. On the floor, another card, identical to the first. File deleted by unknown user but this time, a faint addition penciled in the margin. User present, tape evidence iReal BO5 offered more than static. Playback revealed a shuffle of footsteps, then the scrape of a chair. A breath shallow. A whisper so faint I replayed it 50 times. I was never here. Orton refused to listen further. He threw his jacket over the machine and muttered, "Clerks without badges don't want witnesses." When I checked the drawer after, the second card had vanished. Only the smell of graphite remained. Ledger no testi ledger, restless now, filled a page without waiting. File 002 existed only as promise. Deletion confirmed. Unknown user acknowledged. Witnesses, none except you. Archive continues despite subtraction. Stamped faintly beneath, Nightroom Entry D7 status, investigation continues and smaller. Typed later, as if embarrassed to be seen, you cannot delete the act of deletion. The corridor of XS80 midnight. I walked the corridor between drawers. Every label had sprouted faint pencil excess, as if file 002 as absence had infected the archive like a virus. Excess on 003, 014, 088, 147. All faint. All erasable, yet present. On BO6, the microphone picked up the sound of pencils moving without hands. A whisper accompanying each mark, "Not here, not here, not here." I rubbed one out with my thumb. The graphite smeared, but the whisper remained. The vanishing presence. You have not yet reconstructed what file 002 once contained. Perhaps nothing. Perhaps everything. Its deletion is its content. Its user unknown is its author. Orton insists we are being taught. It wants us to understand subtraction as evidence, he said. Sometimes a missing file is louder than a found one. I'm not so sure. Silence teaches, yes, but deletion accuses. The unknown user has left a shadow across the drawers, and shadows insist on hosts, carbon ghosts, the degausser card, and an account that shouldn't log in classification, internal restricted access repository, Nightroom cold storage. Unit D7 Sable Drawer Field Agent milliliters. J. Hail Credential 4CTY Date of Continuation 30 October Year Withheld Associated Tape Reels BO7 BO9. Subject Deleted File Incident Auxiliary Instruments Ledger Clothbound. Audit Slips Acetone Swabs Ultraviolet Lamp. Retired Teletype Model 33 Onion Skin Stationery Box 9. Polaroid 2 frames, pocket magnetometer salvaged. Patience for absent carbon ghosts paper lies, but carbon tells the truth badly. You can hold a sheet to the light and discover the reluctance of a deleted line, the shallow bruise where a typist pressed and then reconsidered. Onion skin is worse. It remembers everything and forgives nothing. I asked Auden to bring me the box-labeled stationery, duplicates obsolete from the old print shop annex, a room that smells of starch and machine oil and the resigned optimism of memos. He returned with box 9, heavier than its label admitted. Inside, fragile interleaves from forms never used. Carbon sheets the color of storm water, and a clutch of circulation cards abandoned when the archive traded stamps for barcodes and then traded barcodes for nothing at all. On the back of one circulation card, a ghost, file 002, followed by an underline that had not yet decided what name to carry. The underline dimpled the cardstock. Whoever cued the file into existence meant to title it later and never did. I treated the card like a crime scene. Under UV, a reluctant fluoresce, 4 letters that had once been typed and then coaxed into denial shad, and then a smear where the rest should be. Shadow, shard, shade, share, shale. I chose not to choose. Selecting one would be ownership. The unknown user had made that mistake. Stylish, on BO7. I logged the procedures as if the tape could notarize my restraint. The reel caught the hiss of the UV ballast, the grease paper whisper of carbon, and the low click of my magnetometer when it wandered near the spine of box 9. Magnetics are nerves. They twitch when history passes. Carbon ghosts, Auden said, leaning in the doorway with a stiffness that came from hours of refusing furniture. You can almost print the absence. You can, I said. But then you've turned a ghost into a fact, and facts resent adoption. The degausser cart, every institution that accumulates records also accumulates machines to unmake them. The Nightroom owns a degausser, a waist-high cart with a metal maw and a red toggle that hums like a refrigerator contemplating ethics. It lives in the basement near the exit no one takes, next to a wall of framed certificates that congratulate the department for surviving budgets. No one signs for the cart. The cart signs for you. When you throw the toggle, you acknowledge a belief that magnetism is memory's ribcage. I rolled it into the corridor between D6 and D7, the aisle that had grown pencil excess like lichen. The meter on my salvaged magnetometer jumped for the first time since the forest, a quick bright muscle of reading, and then a sulk. The cart's last maintenance sticker was a decade old and initialed by someone with a letter that could be V or Y. The ink had run, like alibis do. Who used this last? I asked the quartermaster, a woman who had taught 3 generations of forms how to behave. Nobody, she said, then corrected herself by glancing down the hall. At least, nobody I can inventory. She rubbed her wrist, a habit of clerks who spend their lives signing on behalf of other people's desire to be done. Sometimes in the morning the cord's warm. We plugged the degausser in and did not throw the switch. I placed the carbon card with file 002 into its throat and waited, because sometimes restraint is the test. The cart hummed without persuasion, faint, like a sleeping animal diagnosing the room. My magnetometer complained. The needle did a short, embarrassed dance. On BO8, the tape registered a low field oscillation at a frequency that has no business traveling through walls. I removed the card. Its bruise of shad had still not decided to finish the word. Auden pointed at the floor under the cart, 3 pencil excess arranged in a triangle, faint, almost ceremonial. Someone had crouched here with a stolen minute and a soft lead. He put his boot over one mark and twisted, a human eraser. The graphite smeared. The triangle did not. The teletype that prints without ribbon in the annex. Under a dust shroud and 2 layers of institutional guilt. dwelled the retiree, a Model 33 teletype that had once spoken to mainframes and bored storm sirens into practicing. I had asked for it on a hunch, which here means the pores on my forearms had learned to interpret voltage. We wheeled it to a grounded table, found a power strip that had forgiven older sins, and gave the machine a second chance at electricity. The platen rolled in a little cough. The paper feed stuttered. Nobody sells ribbons this century. The ribbon inside had the color not of ink but of a stain that happened to a ribbon. I dialed the phone coupler out of habit. Its rubber cups missed the warmth of landlines. No dial tone. Our lines had remembered they were not a museum. Even ribbonless, the machine can emboss. Keys strike, letters bruise the page, a ghost text. I rolled in onion skin box 9 had sheets to spare and fed the teletype a question with the dignity of a prayer left on a voicemail. WHO deleted file 002. The machine replied with the clatter of an elderly typewriter having opinions and embossed. Pale as sleep, user, unknown time, 412 command, purge reason, not enter read. The second line arrived half a minute later. Uninvited note, account disabled in 1997. Disabled accounts don't log in. You can't purge with credential that lost its citizenship before your interns were born. Unless the account never left at all, Orton stared at the page. There's your clerk without a badge, he said. The badge expired and the clerk didn't, or the badge grew a ghost, I said. We ran a second query, because rituals require repetition. WHAD is file 002. The teletype thought like an old man tying a knot. File 002, placeholder title, not entered contents, uncreated status, scheduled then deleted attached, shadow index shadow. The bruise had chosen its word. Not a file about a thing, but a file about a catalogue of things that weren't there. The shadow index, an accounting of uncreated entries. I know archives. The items you never had are the ones that ruin your sleep. The janitor's who a good janitor knows more about your building than your director does. I found ours, Mr. Del in the corridor with the resolute melancholy of a man whose nightly argument with scuffs never ends. He pushes a cart that holds a bucket, a radio tuned to a station nobody listens to on purpose, and an old magnet on a stick for nails and paper clips that flee where they shouldn't. You see anyone in the stacks around 4? I asked. He looked at the clock on his cart. It did not tell time, it told confidence. I see what rooms do when nobody signs for them, he said. Night rooms are the rooms that like night. What do these rooms do? They blink, he said. Lights barely. Doors a breath open. Elevators think about floors they're not allowed to admit. People? One, he conceded. Walks like a person who doesn't want to announce how much they carry. Makes sounds like fabric that took a vow. Leaves no trash. Leaves the air straightened behind. Badge? Doesn't use doors that need badges, he said. He pointed with his chin at the far corner where a service passage ignored architecture. The old courier stare. Before your time. Before somebody declared hallways intellectual property, he handed me a bent paperclip he'd plucked from the stair tread, then thought better and took it back. Metal remembers, on B09, my pocket recorder caught the freight elevator humming 3 floors away. No one had punched the call button. Its motor liked to rehearse. The corridor felt like a held breath. The shadow index in the ledger's back, where accountants hide love, I found a section I'd never noticed. Thin pages, tissue delicate, numbered with letters A, B, C, then a jump to S in heavier stock. The tab read shadow index in a hand that had trained under a ruler. Inside, lines upon lines with no titles, only impressions untitled file promised, pending case budget denied, dossier placeholder client never arrived. Each line had a date that flickered between years depending on the angle of light. File 002 appeared on page 1 as if the rest of the index had auditioned to justify its presence. Beside it, a pencil notation in the same controlled hand we'd found around ravens and culverts. Delete for cause. The cause column was empty. Barlow arrived at my elbow with the quiet a large man can achieve when he rehearses it daily. He didn't ask permission to pick up the ledger. He lives in a world where books grant consent out of habit. He read the page once and smiled the way cartographers smile when a coastline I've drawn makes their pencils jealous. You know what this is, he said. An index of negatives, I said. A catalogue of absences. He shook his head. No, a budget. Every archive has one. Space, time, attention. The shadow index lists what you pay by not keeping. File 002 was a payment, and the unknown user is the treasurer or the debt collector, he said. Either way, for 12 is when the office runs payroll. Audit trail paper DNS digital systems store audit trails in logs that speak in epoch seconds and hex. Our logs are in paper and in the muscles of doors. I followed the courier stair Delio had blessed and found a door that believed itself obsolete. On the inside of its frame, someone had penciled DNS, not domain name, but door numbering system, the old janitor script that survives administrators like a palimpsest. DNS for 12, the graphite wrote, with a little triangle like a warning label for mathematicians. A sheet of onion skin had been tacked inside the door with 2 brass brads. It bore a typed list, 410 Nightroom heartbeat for 11. Drawer audit for 12 user, unknown purge command. 413 acknowledge, Clark for 14 close below. As if someone had leaned into the typewriter with nerves. A half line for 15 fail, then a smear. I held the page under UV. No letters emerged from the smear, only a longer bruise. The clock had hiccuped and no one had enjoyed it. I took a Polaroid of the onion skin, aware of the ledger's index of emissions making a face I could not see. The photograph, when it developed, reversed the smear into legibility for a breath and then let it go, like a memory practicing ritual. Reason, room requested empty. Who requests emptiness? Clerks who need to repurpose drawers. Agents that forget how to share air. Rooms that want to go to sleep. The badge that wasn't the quartermaster found me later with a tray of expired laminates. Halloween, she said, dry. Your favorite holiday. We dug through past staff like archaeologists of bureaucracy. A face here, a haircut that never came back there. I was about to give up when a laminate stuck to my thumb as if static had formed an opinion. It had no photo, no name, only a barcode with no numbers printed beneath. On the back, in faint courier, access, all auth, none, fake, she said. Or a training prop, or a metaphysics, I said. I walked the badge past the badge readers that modernized our doors into believing in themselves. They ignored it. I held it against the teletype as a joke. The machine woke like an old dog smelling a former master and embossed, account, deleted home, DV null rights, inherited from place, inherited from place. Authority not from a person but from architecture. Nightroom is user, your unknown user, Orton said, is the building. Buildings don't type. Buildings don't punch purge. But they can request emptiness if their corridors want to be narrower, the voice that isn't voice again at for 12. Because we cannot refuse rituals without learning new ones. We sat in cold storage with the lights off and the drawers thinking kind thoughts. I placed BO9 on record and did not breathe loudly. The rotary phone did not ring. The degausser did not hum. The teletype sat like a veteran pretending to nap. The drawer marked 002 a slot of metal and expectation moved. Not much. A whisper inward as if it had exhaled. The tape caught 3 sounds, a click like a relay changing its mind, a soft distance that could have been fabric promising not to crease, and a line of embossed letters arriving without ribbon and without paper, file 002, deleted for cause we saw nothing. We read the sound. Sometimes letters accept being sound before they risk being seen. What cause? I asked the dark. The answer, if it came, went to the same forwarding address as everything else that year. Working theory for now, a file that never existed. Scheduled into being and then at 04, 12 deleted by an account that cannot log in. An index of negatives listing promises we paid by failing to keep. A degausser that thrums when drawers think. A teletype that embosses when buildings remember. A janitor who counts rooms by how they blink. A badge with access because it belongs to the walls. Hypothesis, file 002 was not content. It was a reservation, a claim on future attention. The Nightroom, our clever, tired, underfunded building executed a housekeeping routine that frees capacity by erasing placeholders. The unknown user is not a ghost clerk but the room itself, acting under a protocol so old the people who wrote it retired into story. Counter hypothesis, that's sentimentality. Something else wore the building's authority like a coat. It deleted a file that might have become dangerous if it had been allowed to acquire nouns. Barlow fevers my first version. Auden fevers my second. The ledger, traded to suspense, stamped. Nightroom entry D7 status, cause unresolved, which is a bureaucratic way of saying keep listening. Next step shadow. Index, cross-compare other entries scheduled and deleted at for 12. If a pattern of near files emerges. 002 is a species, not a specimen. Degausser cart, record field strength drift over the next 3 nights at 04, 10:04, 15. If the cart hums without switch, the building is admitting guilt. Teletype, pose non-leading questions, for example, WHO is Clark in 04, 13 ACK, Clark. While avoiding invitations to invent, janitors stare, steak with onion skin. If it types itself again, photograph only once, then practice a mission. Badge, lock in empty envelope. If it migrates, the Nightroom's privileges exceed my patience. I wrote one more line. Not for the ledger, but for the patience that rooms demand. If the building asked for an empty drawer, what was it making room for? Orton answered without hearing the question. Either a song or a body, he said. In places like this, it's always one of the two, the clerk acknowledges. A drawer requests emptiness, and the reservation we didn't make classification, internal restricted access repository, Nightroom cold storage. Unit D7 Sable Drawer Field Agent, milliliters. J. Hail Credential 4CTY Date of Continuation, 31 October year with held associated tape reels, B10 B12. Subject, deleted file incident, auxiliary instruments, ledger clothbound. Teletype Model 33 ribbonless emboss, degausser card unswitched, UV lamp. Onion skin reams box 9, janitors keyring borrowed. Brass brads, Polaroid 1 frame, pencil for B. Soft as apologies cross-comparing the shadow and deck substances like families develop traits. I spent the morning running. A finger down the shadow index that ledger an X of. Intentions never fulfilled and marking entries stamped with the minute that has started behaving like weather for 12. A pattern emerged. The kind you first mistrust and then resent for being simple. Untitled project pending vendor response. Delete for 12 ACK, Clark Interagency Inquiry hold for jurisdiction. Delete for 12 ACK, Clark box transfer awaiting accession numbers. Delete for 12 ACK, Clark file 002 placeholder title not entered. Delete for 12 ACK, Clark via all reservations claims on space. Time or attention, made in the hope the future would keep its appointments. At for 12, the Nightroom, or what wears its authority like a coat, clears the table. At for 13, someone or something acknowledges, who is Clark? I asked the ledger. The ledger, enjoying its role as CO conspirator, returned a rubber-stamped sigh, ACK, Clark equals acknowledgement signal. Not person, not rank, a signal, not a signature. The building nods to itself. Then why the capital C? Auden asked, tilting his hat at grammar. Because signals get lonely, I said. And we both pretended that was not a diagnosis. The degaussers are unswitched. We parked the cart between D6 and D7 and refused the toggle again. The quartermaster, who had learned to make peace with rituals she wasn't invited to, left us with a glance that said, don't burn my building down with metaphors. I set the magnetometer on the cart's lip and clicked B10 into record. 04, 10 corridor ordinary, the hum of ballasts, the micro-settling of steel, the polite wheeze of HVAC learning to compromise. 411 a below floor vibration, not mechanical. A tremor of purpose. Magnetometer rises to ticks and sulks. For 12, the card answers a switch no one threw. Field strength ramps, not to full purge, but to acknowledgement. A purr, the sound machines make when they believe in work. The drawers in D7 tighten their rails like teeth. 413 a click, lighters are radio changing bands. Magnetometer drops. The cart returns to the ethics of furniture. We lifted the cart to check for hidden remotes or mischief. Only dust and the memory of being plugged into too many budgets. Auden pointed to the floor. Faint pencil excess had returned, this time 4, making a small square around the cart's wheels. We wiped them. They came back like decisions. 04, 12 is the house cleaning itself, Auden said. Clark is the sound it makes to say copy that. What if it cleaned us, I said, and we both looked down at our shoes because superstition is just etiquette with good hair. Teletype, who was Clark? I fed onion skin into the Model 33 and asked the question the room had already heard. WHO is Clark. The machine embossed without ink. The way paper admits pressure before it admits truth. Clark, acknowledgement pulse source, room heartbeat Nightroom roll, verified deletion routine credential, inherited from Placethan. A line arrived that no one had typed. Human Clark local. Del Rio went still in the way people do when a joke lands 20 years late. Auden set the page down with a care usually reserved for birds. He signs off the floors, he said. Maybe he signs off the emptiness too. I found Delio in the stairwell listening to a song only soft wheels make. He did not deny the title. He did not accept it either. I acknowledge, he said finally, as if I had asked for help lifting a box. At for 13, not before. Somebody asks for emptiness. I nod that it happened. I don't make the ask. Who asks? I said, the room, he said. Or the job description your building wrote for itself when nobody proved they loved it. He handed me a brass brad. For the onion skin, he said. So the pages stopped running away. The request line room to empty at the courier stair behind the DNS scrawl, the onion skin we'd pinned yesterday had lengthened. More lines had populated in courier, need as a confession, 410 Nightroom heartbeat 411 draw audit for 12 request, room to empty D7. Slot 002 for 12 command, purge placeholder for 13 ACK, Clark local for 14 close success. No reason this time. No smear. Just clean bureaucracy. I pressed my ear to the door and heard concrete remember water, ask for a room to empty, Barlow repeated when I read it to him. We teach our buildings to want hollow places. That's how they remain buildings, and we put a file in that hollow, I said. We called it 002. We called it a reservation, he corrected gently. The room called it clutter, the badge that migrated us that night, the nameless laminate access, all auth, none moved. I had locked it in an envelope and slid it beneath a stack of misprinted forms. Every bureaucracy needs ballast. At 3:59, the envelope lay where I left it. At 4:12, the envelope lay open on the sill of D7, the laminate half exposed like a tongue. I had not unlocked the door. The quartermaster had not keyed a night entry. Delio swore he had been coaxing a mop to understand corners. The ledger, in its dry gratitude, stamped, badge, place-bound teletype, unasked. Embossed, rights inherited from place temporary scope, draw, not filial badge that opens rooms, not records. Authority calibrated to volume, not story. It explained less than it solved, and we thanked it accordingly. Barlow's algebra of rooms. Barlow arrived with coffee and the look of a man who has accepted that explanation is a season, not a destination. He sketched rectangles as if bribing his pencil with geometry could keep it from poetry. Rooms have stomachs, he said. They digest transactions. Intake, boxes, tapes, ledgers. Peristalsis, circulation, audit, retrieval. Egesta, deaccession, disposal, forgetting. Your 412 is a peristaltic spasm. A healthy room empties itself to make room, and 002 was midnight snack. 002 was a mouthful of air with a label on it, he said. You can choke on labels, he softened. I am not unsentimental. I loved your forest because it learned choir. I love this because the building learned to defend itself from hoarders from us, Orton added. He does not flinch when sentences include him. The drawer we opened on purpose. You decided to do the rude thing elegantly. Open slot 002 at for 11, 1 minute before the ritual purge, and fill it with exactly what it had asked for, emptiness, so that 412 would have nothing to do. We removed the placeholders, the 2 printed cards, the smudged circulation slip, the onion skin copy of the purge schedule, and put them on the floor 6 feet away, outside the volume of the slot. We wiped the runners, left the space clean, and because we're still human, I wrote on a strip of paper, "Room, this is your space." I did not put the paper in the drawer. I taped it to the cabinet beside the slot. Delio approved with a nod he uses when people finally learn to stack chairs correctly. B11 rolled 04, 10 heartbeat, 411 audit. The cart listens. The air tenses like a gut before a sneeze. 412 nothing. No purr, no click. No drawer shift. The magnetometer turns into a citizen. 413 a soft ACK from the teletype across the hall, a single letter embossed onto blank onion skin, C for Clark or courtesy. For 14 the Nightroom exhaled. We had tricked the ritual by honoring it. Leave a hollow big enough and the building doesn't have to invent one. Orton allowed himself the smallest grin. We taught a room manners, he said. No, Delio said from the stair, amused. The room taught you. The reservation we didn't mark at a ledger, feeling that we were ready to read. Flipped to a page I had not earned, file 002 reservation. Purpose, hold for subject WHO has not arrived. No, do not fill with inventions. Schedule, review it for 12. Until arrival or relinquished Dundaritha in hand I recognized from forests and culverts. A sentence, if the subject does not come. Let the room keep the chair empty. My throat performed the involuntary etiquette that precedes grief. I had been writing to a person, not an entry. 002 was a seat and empty chair waiting for a witness who never checked in. At 412, the building, practicing triage, tossed the chair out of the aisle until we proved we wanted it clear for someone real. Who? I asked the ledger.it wrote nothing. It had learned step 7 from us, receive without owning, the call that ended before it began at 412 the next night. The rotary phone did not ring once. It clicked a half gesture. I lifted the receiver because ritual is a way to teach your hands the past tense. Silence, then a breath, then something not voice and not static. I have a file. Who are you? I asked, careful with nouns. I will be late. The line ended. The drawer did not move. The badge did not migrate. The cart did not purr. The ledger stamped, smaller than before. Reservation active. Barlow drew a little rectangle on my notepad and shaded it lightly. Hold the chair, he said. Maybe the room scheduled a person and the person finally read their calendar. Audit. What we keep. What we leave. We wrote the index of omissions for this incident because restraint is part of craft. Recording of the not ring, not captured. Photograph of the type C on onion skin, not taken. Spectrogram of the carts unswitched per the night it did, not generated. Badge migration time lapse, not attempted. Name of the reservation subject, not asked. Instead, we filed what rooms appreciate, space, stamped with a date and the promise to revisit without demanding plot. The cover slip reads, Nightroom Cold Storage Unit D7 Sable Drawer File 002, Reservation Active Status, Open Do Not Fill Custody, Room Primary. Human Clark acknowledged LIO, initialed. The way men do when they agree with gravity. Working conclusions provisional unknown. User is a routine. The Nightroom's internal appetite for cleanness wearing credentials inherited from architecture. ACK, Clark is a pulse. Occasionally a man named LIO honors it by being present. 412 is not an omen. It is maintenance. If we stuff our drawers with promissory notes, the room harvests them for compost. File 002 is a reservation, not a story. Keep the chair empty. When someone arrives, the room will make the introduction. Auden read the list and scratched his jaw like a man taught late by good teachers. The scary thing, he said, is that the person could be you, I said, or nobody, he answered. And there was mercy in it. One last test, no instruments. We stood in D7 at 411 with hands empty and eyes that had promised not to invent. The slot for 002 lay open like a mouth taught to be polite. The corridor held its breath, then let it out the decent way. At 412, nothing performed. At 413, the teletype produced that single patiency again, embossed on a blank sheet I had not rolled. I'll be back at the hour, Delio said. To nod, we left the drawer open by a finger's width. A file that is a chair should not be shut. Addendum, for the record and for whoever is late, if you are the subject who was meant to sit in file 002, this is your notice. We did not fill your slot with substitutes or souvenirs. We resisted the fond cruelty of inventing you. Your chair is here. The room knows the shape of you well enough to ask for emptiness in your name. Arrive at 412 or any minute you can persuade to matter. Knock once. The clerk will nod. We will not ask for a badge. The place will recognize you. Until then, we file absence as promise and promise as absence. The cart will hum when it remembers, the teletype will cough a C like good manners, and the ledger will keep a page open the way forests keep a border polite. On B12, the last sound is a drawer staying still. Late arrival notice, the chair test, and the audit that writes itself classifican, internal restricted access repository, Nightroom cold storage. Unit D7 Sable Drawer Field Agent Milliliters. J. Hail Credential 4CTY Date of Continuation 1 November Year withheld associated tape reels B13 B15. Subject Deleted file incident Auxiliary instruments Ledger cloth bound. Model 33 Teletype emboss only Polaroid 2 frames reserved. Brass Brads X6 Onion skin ream Box 9. D. Gausser card unswitched. Magnetometer temperamental. Courtesy toward room slate arrival noticeth Nightroom does not do holidays. But November gives even buildings a new angle of light. At 3:58, the corridor between D6 and D7 wore that grey institutional dawn that bleaches personality from paint. Slot 002 remained open a finger's width and etiquette we'd taught it. On the cabinet side, my strip of paper room, "This is your space," had yellowed by an idea. A third onion skin sheet had pinned itself to the courier stair. Not pinned, bradded. Del Reyes brasswork. Text in courier, the clean grammar of machines that believe in procedures. Late arrival notice subject, not entered. Reservation, file 002 active. Window 04, 1204, 15 admit without badge ACK. Clarkey read it twice and recognized the feeling like hearing your name from a stage and knowing you've never auditioned. Orton ran a thumb under the Brad head and nodded. "A carpenter's amen." "Chairs set," he said. "If they come, they sit." The teletype coughed a single letter onto a blank onion skin already in its throat. "C. Courtesy, Clark, copy choose your theology." I didn't roll the page out. "We have learned to leave blanks blank." The chair test Barlow arrived with a folding chair the color of things people intend to forget. He had written 002 on its underside in grease pencil, not as claim but as orientation. "The room asked for a chair," he said. "Let's see if it will tolerate the literal." We did the placement in 3 careful gestures. We pulled slot 002 open just enough to signal invitation but not panic. We set the chair beside the slot, not in it half in the aisle, half in the cabinet's shadow. We said nothing while we did it. A T for 11, the corridor deepened a shade, the way water does when a cloud auditions. The degausser cart gave its unswitched clearing of throat. The magnetometer needle leaned and reconsidered. At 04:12, the minute that has made a career of itself, the room performed no purge. Instead, the chair made a sound I did not know furniture could make, a small, formal settling as if gravity had learned a new rule on B13. The tape logged the settling, a brief field rise, and something else I only heard on replay: 2 steps. Not heavy, not light, and then silence choosing a shape. And 01 sat. But the chair was different after. Its paint looked less factory. Its legs remembered weight. I wrote in the ledger margin, occupied in principle, Del Rio, uninvited but never unwelcome, nodded once from the stair. "I'll acknowledge," he said, "not occupancy, admissibility. The audit that writes it's ill fought, it's hurt. They are the medicine bureaucracies obey because someone else watches." I opened the ledger ready to inscribe a tidy paragraph and discovered the page had arranged itself into an audit log in the old style columns. Monospace, a linen logic that remembers ledgers were once. Cloth, audit drawer D7 slot 002 for 10. Heartbeat OK for 11 audit pass. 412 purge skipped empty. 412 reservation active for 13 ACK Clark local. 414 status ready await. Subject for 15 window closed beath. A line that did not belong to audit but to prayer. Leave the seat unpromised. Barlow tapped the line with a thumbnail. "Rooms that pray," he said, "are the only kind worth maintaining. The account that answers on Sethi teletype indulges exactly 1 question per night if you are polite." I asked, "Does the building know WHO the subject is?" The Platen hesitated, then embossed, "Nightroom knows the shape, not the name expected input, mass plus intent plus listening mass." Intent, listening. I glanced at the chair whose legs remembered weight. Intent arrived in the minute that demanded it. Listening was our profession. Orton refused to call any of this mystical. "Put a notice on the door," he said. Plain language. "We're not a church." We typed a card on the typewriter whose X remained jammed, avoiding words that required that letter. It read, "Holding, file 002 if you are expected. Sit. If you are not, leave the chair empty." We bradded the card beside the strip that belonged to the room. 2 notices, 2 authors. The cart's confession: we had been treating the degausser cart like a suspect. It wanted to be a witness. At 14:00 daylight, unsupernatural, the quartermaster called to say the cart had moved 4 inches on its own. No field, no hum, just wheels that remembered circles. I put a chalk tick by the left front wheel and waited with the patience of men who suspect weather. By 14:07, the tick had migrated a finger's width. I checked the floor, level. I checked the cord, slack. I checked myself for superstition, present. At T14:12, because averages like to be obeyed, the cart stopped. I measured the distance, exactly the depth of slot 002. The cart had placed itself across from the chair like a lecturer considering SRO. "Not a purge," Auden said. "A posture. I put my hand on the cart's metal lip. It was warm, but not from electricity, from decision. Machines do that when the room uses them as pronouns. Model behavior retired teletype printed a form without invitation. Onion skin shivered in the platen, and the keys embossed blanks like a census for one. Arrival form subject name, time, purpose, file 002 Clark ACK, CDELIO signed the bottom with a single letter that wasn't C and wasn't his initial. It looked like a checkmark taught to behave. I don't name people, he said. I name happenings. He slid the form under the chair's leg to steady the wobble the chair had acquired when it learned principle. Barlow laughed. All chairs wobble when they become symbols, he said. They recover when someone sits. Night preparations, no instruments, we agreed. No reels during the for 12 window tonight. The previous night's tape had told me enough to earn a mission. I left B14 loaded but off. The ledger lay open because the ledger never sleeps. The badge with access, all auth, none had been sealed twice and placed in a drawer that wasn't ours. We left the corridor lights at their dim legal minimum. The room knew its lines. A T409, a draft moved from D6 toward D7 like a person reconsidering which door belongs to them. At 4:10, the heartbeat, our infrastructural metronome, kept time. At 4:11, the chair adjusted imperceptible to eyes, not to the part of your ribs that remeasures when rooms prepare to include. At 04:12, nothing theatrical. The world did not premise a miracle. The drawer did not glide. The cart did not hum. The teletype did not cough. Instead, an odor, linen and graphite, the smell of stationery opened in a clean room. Then a pressure, like a hand hovering an inch above the seat and deciding that hovering is ruder than contact. Then contact. Nobody appeared. But the weight existed. The chair stopped being a symbol and briefly became a chair. Auden's hat came off. Delio, somewhere behind us, made the soundmen make when a bolt seats, a satisfied breath. I looked at the ledger. The audit line inscribed itself, 412 subject present unnamed on the courier stare. The onion skin wrote one line and then allowed itself the luxury of white space. Admit without badge complete we did not speak. The room had asked for listening. We owed it more than habit. The chair held weight for the length of one unspectacular minute, and then lightened by half, as if the subject had shifted forward, elbows on knees, to consider. Another 30 seconds. Then the rest of the weight departed in good order. Thank you, I said to air, which is sentiment and bad practice. Still, rooms keep what kindness teaches them to. What the subject left we promised ourselves no souvenirs. We kept the promise almost. Beneath the chair after lay a fibber, not clothing. Thread from onion skin, those fine cotton hairs that rim sheets when factories still respected pulp. I pushed it gently with a thumbnail. It clung to the arrival form edge, then let go. Paper touched paper, Barlow said softly. Maybe the subject signed in by being near. The teletype, mischievous with restraint, embossed a single character on the still blank header of the arrival form, an M dash, wider than a hyphen. A punctuation that means something continues here unsaid. I did not read into it. I let it be grammar. We slid the form back under the chair leg. Stability is its own ascent. After action, Room and Humanta ledger posted its status without theatrics. Nightroom entry D7 file. 002 reservation held Clark ACK. Yes purge. Skip next window for 12 daily. Until further, Delio wrote a private notation where only staff look, a chalk mark on the inside of the cabinet's skin. At the height of a seated knee. If you know, you know, Auden, hat still in hand. Said the sentence you keep for when craft feels like faith. We did our jobs. Barlow gathered the extra brads back into his pocket as if they were coins that believed in interest. Keep the chair dusted, he said. Dignity attracts arrivals. Questions we didn't ask. Index of emissions name? Not asked. Purpose? Not asked. Return time? Not asked. Photograph? Not taken. Spectrogram of weight event? Not generated. We logged only what a room would permit a room to read. For 12, the chair bore weight. The file remained a reservation. The building said yes. A postcard that didn't travel at dawn. The quartermaster slid an old departmental postcard under my door. The front showed a photograph of cold storage when it was younger and believed officers could be handsome. On the back, typed in courier and then erased until only the indent remained, welcome, we held your seat. No address. No stamp. The card had never left the building. Rooms send mail to themselves when they need an alibi. I tucked the postcard between onion skin reams. The M dash on the arrival form looked happier, which is just me anthropomorphizing punctuation and getting paid for it. Working theory revised. The unknown user is a scheduled routine that empties unearned claims. Clark is a pulse. Del IO attends it, human scale. File 002 is a chair or reservation for an unnamed subject that the room conserves by removing our appetite to fill it with fiction. Arrival is not dramatic. It is wait plus intent plus listening during the minute the building grants. Theories are scaffolds. You take them down when the building stands. Next we'll keep the window, keep the chair, keep the drawer ajar. The degausser will confess when necessary. The teletype will produce forms until we deserve paper. I'll keep the Polaroids unshot and the badge asleep. The shadow index has more 04, 12s than our patience. But patience can be taught. If the subject returns, and I think they'll need nothing from us except what rooms and archives and decent people are arrivals. A place and no questions, the whisper ledger, photographs that refuse, and the acknowledgement loop classification, internal restricted access repository, Nightroom cold storage. Unit D7 Sable Drawer Field Agent milliliters. J. Hail Credential 4CTY Date of Continuation 2 November Year withheld associated tape reels B16 B18. Subject Deleted file incident Auxiliary instruments Ledger clothbound. Whisper active Teletype Model 33 emboss only. Degausser card unswitched. Posture Polaroid SX70 refuses to develop. Onion skin stationery box 9. Chalk. Patient Seth whisper ledge. The ledger has acquired a habit. At night, when the corridors practice silence, the pages lift slightly at the corners as if a draft studies them. I lay awake in the cold storage office, eyes on the linen boards, waiting. At 2:31 the whisper began, paper brushing paper, though no hand turned it. I leaned in close enough to hear words exhaled in graphite breath. Reservation acknowledged. Subject unentered. Daily until arrival. I pressed my palm flat against the ledger. It warmed, not electrically, but like an animal with circulation. My ribs matched the rhythm. I pulled back, unsettled less by the sound than by my willingness to catalogue it. Auden, perched in the doorframe as if doors were stages, muttered, "Ledgers should not talk back. You'll start filing to them like friends. They already file to us," I said. "It's only polite." The whisper ended with a stamped line in courier that appeared beneath my fingers. 412 reservation Helter. Ledger had spoken its own audit. Photographs. That refusee attempted a Polaroid during the next 412 window. Not of the chair, not of absence, just of the cabinet face, the clean metal that promised emptiness like a virtue. The camera clicked, the motor whirred, the frame slid out. White. No developing cloud, no image. I shook it, though I know better. I waited. Still white. At dawn, faint words appeared where the picture should have been, inverted like photographic negative. Not your image. Tried again the following night with a different angle, different light. Same refusal. 2 frames, both stamped with denials. The third frame I saved unopened, tucked back into the pack, because refusal deserves witnesses. Barlow studied the white rectangles as though they were essays. Rooms redact, he said. They just use light instead of black bars. Orton slid the frames into a file sleeve marked artifacts, visual inadmissible. He whistled once, tuneless. Good for YouTube, he said. Then he didn't smile, because jokes without audience are only instructions. The chair speaks without weight. Night 3, we left the chair as always half-shadowed, dignified. At 412 it did not gain weight. It gained voice. Not sound through air, but a subtle pressure rearranging ribs. Words pressed against sternum rather than ear, reservation honoured. Continue daily. Do not invent. The phrase "do not invent" repeated twice, the second time softer, as if the room disliked emphasis. Del Io arrived late, broom in hand, and acknowledged without being told. Rooms punish invention, he said. They like their lies honest. He dusted beneath the chair with an indifference that meant reverence. I checked the ledger. New marginalia, warning, invention equals cancellation. The warning chilled me more than absence had. Files that vanish are one thing. Reservations revoked are worse. A chair removed means no subject will ever arrive. The acknowledgement loop teletype printed during the window without instruction. A.C.K. Clark, local A.C.K. Clark room. A.C.K. Clark are named 3 acknowledgements, each stamped with its own pulse. Auden frowned. Too many Clarks spoil the archive, he said. But he wasn't mocking. He was worried. Delio admitted the first his nod. The second belonged to the Nightroom itself. The third? He refused to comment. He swept chalk into lines that resembled a loop, then erased them fast enough to call it housekeeping. Barlow offered the hypothesis the subject had begun acknowledging their own absence. A self-Clark. A loop where the guest signs in before arriving. The ledger confirmed indirectly. Self-ACK permitted. Reservation strengthened. We had created a triangle. Human, building, subject not yet. Triangles injure better than pairs. Tape evidentiation B16, the real caught faint interference during the window. Not voices this time, but code digital tones approximated through analog hum. When analyzed against modem handshakes, the rhythm aligned to an aborted login sequence. Attempt user entry, unknown credential check, bypassed action, Sith tape degraded after 5 seconds, leaving only hiss. Somebody's logging into furniture, Orton said. He didn't laugh. Neither did I. The badge returns access. All auth, none badge we had hidden came back. It lay on the seat of the chair at dawn, face up, as if someone had checked in and left proof. We hadn't unlocked its envelope. We hadn't touched the drawer it was stored in. The badge wanted to be where acknowledgement gathered. The teletype confirmed with a line on blank onion skin. Badge returned to correct position. Correct for whom? I cannot guess. We placed it on the cabinet top beside the arrival form. Delio tapped it once with his broom handle, nodded and left it there. The shadow index up to the ledger's annex. The shadow index had changed. File 002, once listed as delete for cause, now read File 002 reservation active. Acknowledged. A new line appeared beneath. Subject may arrive when ready. Chair held. Clark present. The transformation from deletion to acknowledgement was complete. The unknown user had moved from suspect to guest. Barlow closed the annex carefully. As wonders when books become fragile by telling the truth, index of omissions. Tonight's edition. Photograph of the weightless voice, not possible. Recording of the Polaroid denial, not attempted. Measurement of chest pressure words, not calibrated. Identification of the third Clark, not pursued. Asking the subject's name, not dared. Omissions feel safer than data. Working theory for now. The unknown user is no longer unknown. It is a subject who acknowledges their own reservation from outside presence. Clark is now a trinity, human, room, subject. Together they hold continuity. File 002 has shifted status from deletion to reservation maintained by looped acknowledgement. The building enforces courtesy, no invention, no theft, no substitution. Arrival is not spectacle. Arrival is accumulation of acknowledgements until presence becomes inevitable. Closing note to be reopened at 4:15. After the window closed, the chair remained steady. The ledger stamped a new audit line. Reservation extended next window 04:12. The Polaroid frames still refuse. The badge stays visible. The subject has not come, but their promise has. Barlow drew a circle around the word promise in his notes. Orton crossed it out and wrote debt. Delio swept the chalk loop clean. I wrote nothing. Some nights, the absence of my handwriting is my contribution. The cancelled window, a badge that refuses sleep, and the Clark's duplicator classifiane, internal restricted access repository, Nightroom cold storage. Unit D7 Sable Drawer Field Agent milliliters. J. Hail Credential 4CTY Date of Continuation 3 November Year Withheld Associated Tape Reels B19 B21. Subject Deleted File Incident Auxiliary Instruments Ledger Clothbound. Whisper Active Model 33 Teletype Emboss Only. Polaroid SX70 Frames Denied. Degausser Card Unswitched. Badge Access All auth None Returned. Unresting, onion skin stationery box 9. Chalk, brass brads to left, patience that bends but does not break the cancelled window. What for 11? The corridor held its breath as it always did. The chair was waiting, the ledger open, the badge placed carefully on the cabinet top. We knew the choreography. But when the second hand reached its minute 04:12 nothing began. No heartbeat, no audit whisper, no room sigh. The window was cancelled before it opened. The ledger stamped a line without ceremony. 412 reservation skipped, not void. A distinction sharp enough to hurt. I asked aloud, why? The page beneath responded, to prove continuity. Interrupt once. Orton muttered that absence of absence is still absence. But he removed his hat anyway, a badge that refuses sleep at dawn. The badge we'd left inert on the cabinet top had migrated. Not for only half an inch closer to the chair, but the migration was enough to unsettle. I checked for drafts, tremors, tricks. None. The teletype embossed during the skipped window, though we hadn't rolled paper. Badge, active even when not worn. Barlow ran a hand across his scalp. Objects that refuse rest, he said, are closer to people than people admit. Delio touched the badge with his broom handle and nodded once. It knows where it belongs, he said. Belonging is dangerous. We sealed it in an envelope again. Within an hour, the envelope bulged and tore slightly. As though the laminate had shifted impatiently inside, the duplicate Clark the ledger showed a strange insertion, a second acknowledgement at for 13. Though no weight had been felt, no voice pressed ribs. A.C.K. Clark duplicate, I confronted Delio in the stare. Did you sign twice? He shook his head. I only nod once. You don't cheapen nods. Barlow proposed a hypothesis. The building, dissatisfied with the cancelled window, generated its own redundancy, a duplicate Clark to keep the loop intact. Better double than broken, he said. Orton didn't like it. 1 Clark is duty. 2 is bureaucracy mutating. Duplicates breed excuses. I checked the stairwell. A second chalk mark had appeared beside Del Reyes Neat. This one was crooked, hurried, left-handed. Delio denied authorship. The mark was erased, but graphite dust lingered. The Polaroid protestee attempted another photograph against sense. The frame developed a faint shadow this time, not image, not text. A smudge shaped like a bent back. Barlow tilted it under light. Looks like someone nodding, he said. The teletype clattered once and embossed on scrap. Image, duplicate Clark, the ledger. Whispering in the dark, added, not authorized to witness. The photograph was filed under visual, inadmissible with the others. Orton folded the sleeve twice before shelving it. Too much proof ruins the archive, he said. Tape evidentium B19. The reel captured 3 seconds of doubled heartbeat at 04, 13 2 pulses overlapping, 1 faint, 1 strong. At for 14, they resolved into a single line. Barlow frowned. If the subject hasn't arrived yet, the room might be inventing stand-ins. The ledger hissed through paper. Warning, invention cancels. We stopped theorizing aloud. The corridor's sentence chalk lines appeared overnight across the floor tiles, crude courier letters, smudged by wheels and shoes. Wait, Delio swore he hadn't drawn them. I sweep chalk, I don't preach with it. He said T for 12 the next night. The word blurred, as though the building had inhaled it. By for 13 it was gone. The human Clark's doubt for the first time, Delio refused to acknowledge. If there's a duplicate, let him nod, he said, leaning hard on his broom. His silence left the ledger trembling. The page filled in spite of him. A.C.K. Clark room. A.C.K. Clark duplicate. 2 acknowledgements. Neither human. Orton spat into the drain. That's how buildings steal jobs. Delio said nothing, but he swept with violence. As if removing dust could reassert authority, the arrival form expansed. The blank arrival form under the chair grew new fields overnight. Subject name, time purpose, file 002 Clark ACK, see duplicate ACK. The last line was empty, as though waiting for a counterfeit signature. Barlow traced it with his thumb. If duplicates can sign, who needs subjects? He asked. I bratted the form tighter under the chair leg. Some blanks should stay blanks. The cancelled window, reconsider it a skipped window, had been punishment, not accident. The room withheld ritual once to teach us how fragile repetition is. Without for 12, we flailed. With duplicates, the room mocked our dependence. The ledger confirmed with a fresh stamp, test, cancel result, humans unsteady. Barlow smiled without joy. It's studying us as much as we study it. Audit of emissions name of duplicate Clark, not asked. Photograph clarity, not pursued. Tape replay beyond first listen, not allowed. Attempt to reseat badge, not repeated. Human acknowledgement withheld, omission intentional. The omissions weighed heavier than data. Provisional hypothesis, the unknown user's absence is now filled by duplicates generated by the Nightroom itself. The cancelled window is a calibration proof that ritual governs us more than content. The badge refuses to sleep. It belongs where acknowledgement accumulates. If invention cancels, then duplicates may be the building's risk of self-invention. The subject has not yet arrived, but their chair is defended by bureaucracy itself. The file remains open. The room has opinions, and opinions breed Clarks. quiet window, the unbradding, and how a duplicate learns to leave a classification, internal restricted access repository, Nightroom cold storage. Unit D7 Sable Drawer Field Agent Milliliters. J. Hail Credential 4CTY Date of Continuation 4 November Year withheld associated tape reels B20 to B24. Subject Deleted File Incident Auxiliary Instruments Ledger Clothbound. Whisper Active Model 33 Teletype Emboss Only. Degausser Card Unswitched Badge Access All Auth None Restless. Onion Skin Box 9 Brass Brads 2 Chalk. Patients trained to sit quiet window proposed after the cancelled window and the duplicate clerk's unsolicited nods. Barlow proposed a cruelty disguised as courtesy, a quiet window, no invitations, no cues, no furniture rehearsing wait. We would remove every suggestive object the minute before for 12 and permit the building to experience not an absence, but the absence of ritual. If invention cancels, he said, tapping the ledger's warning, then redundancy tempts it. We'll present the minute like a room without a script. Orton didn't love it. Windows like schedules, he said. You take away the ledger's metronome. It starts counting the walls. Still, he lifted the chair, folded it with the painless snap of practiced wrists, and leaned it against the opposite cabinet. Far from slot 002, I slid the arrival form from under the leg and unbradded it, one brad into my pocket, one into Barlow's. We placed the restless badge inside a plain manila envelope and wrote nothing on the flap. The degausser cart we rolled out of sight into the courier stairs shadow near enough to hear, far enough to stop posturing. The teletype received no paper. The ledger I left open but face down, its linen back like a closed eye. The chalk word wait had faded. We swept the dust without ceremony. A T for 11. The corridor acquired only the personality of paint. At for 12, the minute arrived, found no audience, and made of us furniture. No purge, no hum, no embossed C. The window held itself like breath held by someone who knows they are about to laugh and chooses not to. At for 13, the ledger face down exhaled through fabric. A single line seeped through the board to the table beneath. ACK quite valid. We had granted the room permission not to perform. It thanked us by doing nothing beautifully. The unbreeding gobjects remember where the holes go. In the morning, we restored what decency requires, a seat, a sign, a form. I rebradded the arrival form beneath the leg, aligning pinholes with pinholes like a surgeon refusing novelty. The chair returned beside slot 002, not touching the volume we owed to emptiness. The envelope with the badge we set on the cabinet's top still sealed, the laminate quiet for once. As if the quiet window had exhausted even its appetite for migration, Del Io watched from the stair with arms folded, then offered an approval, modest as punctuation. Don't teach a room to need applause, he said. It'll ask for clapping in the stacks. The ledger, restored to face-up existence, posted a status I had never seen. Window type, quiet next type, standard rooms, apparently. Appreciate variety. What the duplicate did at for 12 that night, our standard window restored. The duplicate clerk tried to acknowledge first. We didn't hear it. We felt it, a crooked little pulse that arrived out of order, earlier than the heartbeat, smug the way improvisations get when left unsupervised. The ledger let it stamp, a CK Clark duplicate early, and then scolded it with a second line, sequence violation pending correction. The room corrected by doing nothing for 2 beats. Letting the duplicate's mark sit alone like a child who is spoken out of turn. Then the heartbeat arrived, punctual, and with it the ordinary ACK Clark room. And finally Del Rias not ACK Clark local exactly at 04:13. Barlow whispered. Teaching sequence. Orton whispered nothing. The duplicate did not repeat itself that night. Tape that won't keep B22 should have been our record, a clean 3-part acknowledgement, a window disciplined by posture. On playback, the reel gave us the heartbeat and the human nod and erased the duplicate's early cough. Not masked. Erased, oxide scuffed smooth, hiss substituting where sound had been. I logged it as selective loss. The ledger refused to include the duplicate in the printed audit. On the courier stair, the onion skin schedule bradded days ago added a small emblem to the margin, a hollow circle, the librarian's mark for not applicable. Del Io translated, not admissible. Then, kinda, not needed. The badger's lesson. We tried an experiment neither noble nor particularly clever. We left the envelope sealed for 3 consecutive windows. Result, Night 1, envelope stationary. Night 2, envelope rotated 90 degrees, flap still sealed. Night 3, envelope unchanged, but the badge-shaped impression in the paper deeper. As if Wade had visited without exit, the teletype embossed only once during those 3 nights. At 4:13 on night 2, badge, member of ritual. Not master, which is a polite way of saying you can stop watching me and I will still do my job. We stopped watching it. The listening test word measured wait, sequence, refusal. What we had not yet measured was listening, the third component of the Nightroom's definition of subject. Mass plus intent plus listening. Barlow proposed a test so simple I resented it, we would sit ourselves on opposite sides of the aisle. At for 12, not occupying the chair, not touching the slot, and commit to listening without composing. No notebooks, no pockets buzzing, no teletype queries. Waiting a turn. Delio would stand in the stare as he always did, nodding. Only at 04:13 the minute, the corridor altered in that finer register. You know it as soon as you've learned to respect air. The heartbeat kept time. The duplicate behaved. I heard nothing like language, but the ribs learned a sentence anyway. You are not the subject. You are the room's witnesses. On B23 recorded not at the cabinet but 30 feet away. MIC pointed down the corridor so as not to climb on the moment. The tape caught 4 seconds of silence, so honed it produced a standing wave in the hiss. Spectral analysis later showed a notch where noise should be a negative note, carved by attention. Our listening had become part of the architecture. Good, Auden said when I described it, in the voice of a man who refuses incense. We taught the minute we can be quiet. The duplicate's exit interview perhaps because we had stopped trying to catch it. The duplicate clerk offered its first and only courtesy. The teletype, with no paper, pressed letters into the platen rubber itself, tiny wounds you must squint to read. Duplicate retiring. Reason, sequence learned. Clark, 1 is enough. I rolled in onion skin to save the last line. Thank you for the window. Delio allowed himself a smile small. Private, like a man seeing a child fall asleep in the car. You don't keep 2 nods when 1 will do, he said. I bratted the scrap into the ledger's annex under misc. Courtesies. How we unlearned photographing, I confessed to a relapse. At dawn, the corridor with the paleness of a room that has done hard work briefly well. The chair still a chair and not a symbol for once looked. Right. I raised the Polaroid out of habit, framed nothing worth a camera, pressed the shutter, the frame developed grey, not white, an image latent and then withdrawn. When it cleared, a sentence ran across the bottom margin. Where companies put their logos, do not make a picture of a place that made room. I slipped the frame into visual, inadmissible, and wrote I'm sorry in pencil on the sleeve, not for the file, not for the room, but for the part of me that still wanted souvenirs. Souvenirs are the loud cousins of memory. We have enough of those. The standard window returns in the 5th night after the cancelled window. The minute performed as the earlier good nights had taught it to. Heartbeat 410 audit 411 window for 12 no purge. Reservation held ACK for 13 room plus human close for 14. No duplicate. No badge migration. No photographic protests. The chair didn't learn a sermon. It remembered posture. The ledger's audit printed a new type. Window, standard. Courtesy, a plead. Barlow underlined courtesy and wrote in the margin, protocol is just politeness with a clock. Orton crossed out politeness and replaced it with practice. I didn't referee. The drawer small change at noon broad. Honest light, the drawer face of slot 002 shifted flush. Not out, not in, true. To the cabinet for the first time since we found the card that said file deleted by unknown user. A machinist would say the rails seated. An organist would say the note resolved. The courier stairs schedule typed an extra line in celebration. Alignment, correct. I placed 1 palm on the face. Cold, steady, the kind of steady that knows what chairs are for. Index of emissions and why named the subject. No, the room knows shape, not name. We won't counterfeit names to comfort ourselves. Measure chair weight precisely. No numbering will attract trophies. We need arrivals, not trophies. Ask the badge to perform? No, members of ritual resent auditions. Photograph the aligned drawer? No, rooms deserve privacy when they become ordinary. Omissions, here, keep futures available. Provisional conclusions revised. Duplicate clerk was a training wheel for sequence. Now it retires when we practice courtesy. Quiet windows prove continuity by subtracting choreography once, then restoring it gently. The badge is a barometer, not a key. When ritual stabilizes, it rests. File 002 remains a reservation. Our job is stewardship of hollow space until the subject consents to mass plus intent plus listening. The Nightroom is capable of gratitude. It just embosses it. A note for the subject: if you read ledgers, if you are late but arriving, you should know this: we kept your seat by unlearning. Applause. We leave the drawer ajar by a finger's width. We do not place your name where a blank honors you. Better. At for 12, there is a minute without ambition, a corridor that refuses invention, a chair that remembers wait. Delio will nod when you pass. That is not permission, just recognition. If you decide not to come, the window will continue, daily, like a promise that learned to keep itself company. We will not fill you with a story. We will not laminate you. We will not film your absence. After action, B24 filed, then left alone. B24 contains 30 seconds of what I would call nothing if nothing hadn't earned a capital letter here. A small scuff when the chair agrees with floor. A breath withdrawing when the minute concludes. The faintest teletype click as it chooses not to answer a question. We didn't ask, we boxed it without title. We shelved it without triumph. The ledger stamped the carton, open file, do not close, ordered hat lifted and replaced, said the line he saves for Mercer's, enough. Barlow folded his map of rectangles back into a map of pockets. Delio swept chalk into a neat punctuation of dust. I left a strip of onion skin under the drawer lip, blank, braided to air paper practicing paper and locked nothing. Power cut minute, the manual protocol, and a name without letters classification, internal restricted access repository, Nightroom cold storage. Unit D7 Sable drawer field agent, milliliters. J. Hail credential 4CTY date of continuation, 6 November year withheld associated tape reels, B25 B27. Subject, deleted file incident auxiliary instruments, ledger cloth bound. Whisper active, model 33 teletype emboss only. 2 candles unlit, inspection flashlight. Wax pencil China marker. Brass brads 2, onion skin box 9. Degausser card unswitched, badge access, all auth, none sealed. Patience that passes for Polycythe power cut minuteth Nightroom is competent at weathering maintenance, but power cuts make it sentimental. At 3:57 the corridor lights flickered, recovered, flickered again as if rehearsing an excuse. By 4 o'clock we were dark, not emergency dark with strobes and assurances, but the honest dark of buildings remembering candles. I killed the instinct to fetch equipment. We had promised the room, promised ourselves no inventions. Auden set the folding chair back to its mark beside slot 002, more shadow than object, and rested his palm on the cabinet face until the metal understood we were not asking it to perform. Window still happens, he said. Minutes don't require electricity. Delio arrived by stair, a small lantern hooded with his hand, and did what good clerks do. He stood where a person ought to stand and waited for the minute to decide whether people are useful. A T for 10. There was no recorded heartbeat, no ballast hum, but we felt a structural pulse through floor and rib. The way old mills communicate duty to beams. At 4:11 a hush too articulate to be called silence gathered around the chair like a uniform, and at 4:12, without power, without clocks, the window found us anyway. Not a purge, not a hum, not a typewriter cough. Just wait, precise and courteous, lowering into the chair for the duration of consent. The reservation on it itself, on B25 battery, low. The tape caught only the sound of fabric reconsidering gravity, no voice, no undertone. Just the small sincerity a seat makes when it becomes its purpose. The ledger, powerless, still wrote. I had left it open like a prayer. Its page developed letters slowly, graphite dark, without my hand. 412 reservation held power out. ACK Clark local Delio nodded, not to us, but to the line. In the dark, a nod matters more than light. When power returned at 4:16, the corridor overcompensated with bright fluorescence. We did not cheer. Buildings dislike applause. The manual protocol Ballo arrived mid-morning with paper forms older than my conscience hardstock, pre-printed blanks, manual protocol across the header in a font that trusted rulers. Before automation, he said, we signed every minute with ink. When power leaves, you borrow manners from paper. He unfurled the stack and revealed 4 steps. each with a checkbox that made me nostalgic for offices I never worked in. Prepare the place seat available, slot ajar, badge visible or sealed. Per standing order, remove invitations, no cameras, no queues. No words requesting more than attendance, attend human clerk present. Listening declared, not measured, acknowledge, mark the minute and leave it unembellished. He set his grease pencil to the margin and added a fifth in a hand that had forgiven me before he met me. Do not name what does not name itself. Manual protocol, he said, isn't nostalgia. It's redundancy that respects mystery. We bradded the top sheet to the cabinet beside slot 002, not on it, and copied the steps into the ledger's back leaf with the respect you give recipes that survived rationing. Inspectors with clipboards and know how the outage brought attention. By noon, a two-person facilities team arrived, polite in the way of people whose job it is to make discomfort sound temporary. Clipboards, vests, a laser thermometer that resembled an apology. They asked whether we had lost any media, whether we had sufficient surge protection, whether any stakeholders required updates. They did not ask about for 12. It was not in their calendar. I walked them past the courier stair and its onion skin schedule. The brads made a courteous shine. One inspector squinted at the courier font and nodded as if grammar improves infrastructure. They took a photograph of the stair, not the page. Their camera reflected clipboard glass like a tiny authority. The other asked what the chair was for. Waiting, Orton said. The inspector began to write, then thought better of it. They left us a form, a rectangle with appetite, and a hotline to call if rooms behaved unprofessionally. I slid the form under the chair leg until the wobble disappeared. Paper should serve before it collects. The unsent alert and the outage. The teletype relented from its habit of printing uninvited. Later that afternoon, when power considered itself emperor again, the Platon woke, and without ribbon embossed a system message that belonged to a world with bigger servers than we deserve. Alert unsent, window for 12, held in manual mode recipients. None reason, no account accepts this kind of mail. Barlow whistled softly. Rooms try to email, he said. When email declines, they write to ledgers instead. We filed the embossed scrap under correspondence, internal, non-deliverable. Orton added in pencil, please and thank you require recipients. He isn't wrong, a name without lettuce names a currency. They spend easy and inflate fast. At 4:12 the night after the outage, the window held as if relieved. The badge still sealed stayed still. The cart stayed humble. The duplicate remained retired. We sat opposite the aisle, listening without composing, and learned a small violence. The room tried to teach us a name without letters. It began as pressure at the bridge of the nose, then moved to the sternum, then the line between shoulder blades touches that arrived in a sequence that meant somebody. The way a signature means a person without describing their face. The ledger translated with a mercy that stopped just shy of sin. Subject shape, 2 syllables low, then rising letters. Withheld status, name known to room only wanted, painfully to hazard letters. To write them on a scrap and pretend I'd been told. It would have been tidy. It would have been theft. I wrote instead on onion skin, 2 dashes like syllables that refuse alphabet. We bradded the blank under the arrival form. Del Rio saw my restraint and said nothing, which is how compliments behave in places that earn them. The corridor draws a map at morning sweep. Chalk marked the tile not with words this time, but with a map rectangles and a little X placed 3 tiles in front of the chair. It wasn't Orton's hand. His chalk has carpenter's confidence. This was tentative chalk, like a left hand learning a right-handed doctrine. Barlow measured tiles with his shoe. 3 steps, he said. Distance from door to seat if you favor your right hip. He peered at Del Rio. The clerk shrugged. I nod, he said. I don't choreograph. At the next window we left the X untouched. No badge on it, no paper. When the minute came, the wait arrived, paused on the X for a beat as though confirming choreography, then took the seat. Our ribs learned to synchronize without deciding to. The ledger added a line in a smaller hand. Subject uses the map you deserve. Orton scratched his jaw. Maps are just apologies ahead of time, he said, but he didn't erase the X, the ethics of the empty name. Barlow and I argued gently over coffee that did not deserve us. He wanted to assign a placeholder name in the file for ease, the way people label drawers misc and discover entropy. I wanted to label the labeler. We compromised with an index term that acknowledges shape without trespass. 002. Subject, unentered low rise. The ledger accepted the entry with a stamp that felt like relief. Index, compliant no letters, and because the ledger has a sense of humor. A faint embossed C appeared above the stamp, the clerk's pulse in miniature. Delio nodded at nothing in particular. The knock that wasn't on a Dorthat night, no outage, no inspectors, no treatises about naming only the minute and our ability to arrive at it. At 4:12 we heard a knock not on wood or metal, not on a door. A 3 beat against air, as though someone tried the old courtesy on a new medium and found it sufficient. Barlow, half smiling, half older than his birth certificate, whispered, "First time I've heard a knock that didn't demand admission." The ledger wrote knock ere admit and underlined admit once. The teletype, perhaps jealous, embossed on a blank sheet, admit without badge already true. A filed the sheet without talking to it. Machines that cough truth deserve to keep it. The misfiled minuteras keep archives credible. At 4:11 the following night, the ledger PRE stamped the audit line for 12 reservation held a breath early, as if eager or bored. At 4:12 it struck through the line in grey and reprinted it in the correct place with bureaucratic penance. For 12 reservation held. 4:12 reservation held corrected. Delio chuckled the first outright laugh the minute has permitted him. Even rooms jumped the gun, he said. He placed a tiny checkmark next to corrected, then wiped it away with the edge of his thumb, like a magician who dislikes evidence. Orton muttered, "We're all learning sequence," and didn't hide the fondness. What the cart remembered had Gausser cart had behaved since the duplicate retired, wheels squared a duty. At 14:12, broad day, it rolled 1 inch, then stopped. Not our window it's. I set my hand to the metal lip and felt a residual field, barely more than a rumor. The magnetometer refused spectacle. Its needle twitched, considered litigation, then returned to civility. Barlow, who has learned to assign verbs to objects only when they deserve them, said, "It misses participating." He patted the cart the way people pat horses that have carried too much ceremony. We wrote the moment in the ledger with lowercase. No stamps. The cart remembered an hour and put it down. That is not audit. That is gratitude. Some lines belong to the narrative column. Too many and you've opened a church. We quit while mild. Correspondence. Outgoing unmailed. We prepared a cover slip in case the subject ever wants a file to meet them halfway. Nightroom Cold Storage Unit D7 Sable Drawer File 002 Reservation. Status, Open Manual Protocol available during outages. Seat, present, clean. Unclaimed clerk, local ACK at 413 notes, name known to room as shape 2 syllables, low rise. Not recorded in letters by policy, we did not address it. We did not stamp it. We slid it behind the arrival form, a paper shadow waiting for light to turn it useful. Index of emissions power cut edition, no names, not even placeholders in letters, admitted as shape only. No photographs during outage frames would invent ghost light. No attempt to trace field on cart ritual, doesn't want oscilloscope. No ping to alert, recipients. None let the alert remain unsent. Some mail is only honest when orphaned. No inquiry to facilities about 412, protect them from our minute. Protect our minute from their inbox. Emissions are the price we pay to keep the window public to the room and private to the file. Working theory sturdier than yesterday. 412 is room temporal, not grid temporal. Power outages do not cancel it. Etiquette sustains it. Manual protocol is the room's preferred redundancy, a ceremony that works when machines decide to be artifacts. The subject now acknowledges by knock in air and by map use 3 tiles to the chair. The room knows their shape as 2-syllable low rise, withholds letters. Naming remains theft unless offered. Shape suffices for stewardship. The archive grows trustworthy when it records corrections as gently as events. Barlow circled point 5 with a pencil that had learned to be rounder by being chewed. Orton underlined point 1 once, hard. Like a carpenter driving home a nail reluctant to believe in wood. After action, B27 filed under open B27 is 32 seconds of a building behaving no voltage glamour. No duplicate hunger, a chair accepting mass that thinks before it moves. You can hear Delio breathe like a man given a job exactly his size. You can hear my hand refuse to remove the lens cap on a camera I remembered not to bring. We marked the real spine B27 power cut minute manual and shelved it in D7, above slot 002, not in it. The ledger stamped the carton, open file do not close. The stamp has become a habit. Habits here are courtesies. I left the corridor with the quiet confidence of a person who knows the chairs in his life and chooses not to rename them. External restore. The red line of names, and a minute that refuses capture a classification. Internal restricted access repository, Nightroom cold storage. Unit D7 Sable Drawer Field Agent, milliliters. J. Hail Credential 4CTY Date of Continuation, 7-8 November Year withheld associated tape reels, B28B30. Subject, deleted file incident auxiliary instruments, ledger clothbound. Whisper active, model 33 teletype emboss only. Inspection flashlight, onion skin box 9. China marker red, brass brads, manual protocol sheet posted. Steady refusal to invent the restore team power returned. Attention followed. At 10:20 am, digital services arrived with a cart full of certainty, a Pelican case with field drives, a laptop armored like a bad idea, 2 orange patch cables coiled like threats, and a smile built to reassure grant committees. They had an order, attempt logical restore of file 002. The word logical did most of the heavy lifting. Logic dislikes rooms, will image the cabinet, the lead said, tapping the face of D7 as if it had a port. Then reconstruct the folder structure. If there's metadata, we'll surface it. There isn't, Orton said. You'll surface your optimism. They striped the corridor with cables, asked for outlets that had not sinned, and clipped sensor tabs to steel like leeches to a riverboat. The laptop displayed a forest of progress bars, green, confident, metric. The degausser cart sat further down the hall, neutral. The badge slept in its envelope. The chair waited like a noun. A T1101. The software declared cabinet D7, device found. Of course it had. Every machine mistakes solidity for compliance. A second later, partition 002, mounted ghost. The word ghost forced the lead to cough. They attempted a list. Result, empty. Empty is good, the junior said. Means we can carve. They ran a carved digital necromancy with polite prompts. The screen populated with file stubs, 000, TMP, lost 0009, CHK, a parade of orphan names. Among them, a line that punched the junior in his vocabulary, file 002, reservation. Opened, it contained nothing but spaces and a single carriage return at the end of the beginning. That's interesting, the lead said, which is how specialists pronounce grief. At least we can restore the stub. He clicked restore, the teletype which had not been invited. Embossed onto air, and when it ran out of air, onto its platen, do not fill with inventions. The laptop froze for a full 10 seconds. Then thought obediently and announced with bureaucratic mercy, restore completed. The cart disgorged a file with the right name and all the wrong hunger. I opened it in their presence. Inside, a red line, top margin, drawn in crude pixels, the color of warnings and municipal tape. What's that? The junior asked. A refusal, I said. Barlow, leaning against the cabinet with the posture of men who eulogize daily, said, you have restored a chair, not a person. They left us the drive, a souvenir pretending to be evidence, and a survey link promising continuous improvement. We slid the drive under the wobbly chair leg and cued the wobble. Paper serves. Discs can learn, on B28. The tape caught keys clicking, a polite bleep, and the soft embarrassment of cables unplugged without triumph. The red line of names, the red line inside the restored stub, presented a temptation I would describe as childhood. Write a name. The space after the line was so clean. My hand remembered alphabets. I took the China marker red to red, det to det, and drew the same line across the top of a fresh onion skin sheet instead. Below it, I wrote nothing. I bratted the blank page next to the arrival form with a note to myself I did not deserve. A red line is not a line to write on. It is a line to stand behind. The ledger rewarded restraint with a whisper stamp, redaction in advance. Accepted, Orton read over my shoulder. We're writing a manual for manners, he said. It just happens to be legible. The minute under scrutiny that night, the window arrived to find the corridor still humming from the day's indignities. We had performed manual protocol down to breath, seat available, slot ajar, invitations removed, attend, acknowledge. Still, attention leaves residue. It powders the air like flour. I half feared the subject would stay outside the room, offended by patch cables. A T for 12, weight came anyway measured, exact, the kind of mass that knows its manners. The heartbeat kept time. The teletype held its cough. The badge did nothing that could be called performance. We had a minute in which nothing apologized. On B29, I permitted myself batteries. The reel captured a phenomenon the spectrogram later called anticlimax, and I called peace. Environmental noise went lower, then narrower, as if silence tightened its belt to impress a guest. The ledger printed without flourish. Reservation held. Names refused. ACK, Clark Local. Delio nodded at the line and left the room alone for the rest of the hour. A courtesy that should be taught in schools. The restore team's aftermath, polite failure digital services returned in the morning with reports bound in plastic the color of unearned authority. The summary read, cabinet device recognized. Logical partition mounted as ghost. Philo 02, reservation restored as stub. Contents, null. Integrity, pass. Meaning, outside scope. Recommendation, tag cabinet D7 legacy system. Monitor, they asked if we would like a copy for our stakeholders. I said our stakeholders prefer ledgers to laminates. The junior, who had learned the wisdom of not arguing with nouns, offered us a sticker sheet with barcodes. I placed a barcode on the back of my notebook where it could do no harm. Is there a user we can contact? The lead asked, dutifully. Yes, I said. The room. He offered the smile you bring to haunted houses for children. We did not exchange cards. Quieting the corridor attention lingers like perfume and like smoke. We quieted the corridor for 3 hours. No shoes with declarations, no whistling, no competence. Barlow cleaned the brad holes in the cabinet wood with a cotton swab, careful, circular, the way you erase evidence you plan to confess later. Auden rubbed the chair's feet with a square of felt until it scrapes. Lost their adjectives. We unposted one sign, the oldest. Wayden left another, the manual protocol, because protocol is just a sign that refuse is craving. The ledger, pleased with our housekeeping, gave us a status I had not seen. Minute hygiene. Sufficient. ID takes a good building to make cleaning feel like literature. The name that almost arrived at the next window, the name without letters, came nearer. First, that pressure sequence bridge, sternum, shoulder blade returned, a choreography I could now hum but refused to. Then a sound not from air, from inside the bones, a low syllable that wanted a vowel, and a rising syllable that refused to choose one. The mouth inside the body leaned toward O, then away. The throat inside the room leaned toward E, then reconsidered. The teletype embossed an accommodation, subject, unentered low-rise name held in trust by room. Trust is heavier than secrecy. I wrote nothing. The red line on the onion skin looked satisfied. Which is my metaphor and my problem? Delio stood in the stair and made a sound I cannot file. The intake of breath a person gives a revealed name they have agreed not to repeat. The auditor who brought a flash there is always one witness who believes seeing is a synonym for keeping. At 2:40, a night auditor from upstairs arrived with a camera that clicked like an opinion. Just documenting configurations, she said, already angling a shot at the chair and the bradded forms. Please don't, I said. The corridor prefers memory. She was professional, which sometimes resembles politeness. No faces, she promised. No names. It's not that kind of theft, Barlow said. She took one frame. The flash flattened the minute's architecture into nonfiction. The photograph emerged on her screen, color correct, histogram neat, triumph gentle. Then, over 3 full seconds, the image withdrew grey, then white, then not your image in the bottom margin. She stared at the screen as if it had elected to forgive her. Delete. She asked small. You can keep the lesson, Orton said. She did not return. The badge and the line we gave the badge one chore rest on the red line of the onion skin for the hour preceding the window. It lay there like a statement next to a law. At 4:12, when the wait arrived, the envelope's flap lifted, not open, not performing, just acknowledging pressure in the room as editors, a signed breeze. After the window closed, the badge had left a shallow emboss in the onion skin, rectangle, 2 rounded corners. The impression of authority that knows better than to exercise itself. The ledger translated the impression with a sugarless poetry, authority present not used. We kept the sheet. We did not frame it. The unasked question after, over coffee we didn't deserve, Barlow asked the question that had sat on all our throats like a paperweight. What happens if the subject never arrives? Auden said, then we get good at chairs. Delio said, then we keep the window because rooms deserve 1 minute a day when nobody lies to them. I said nothing because my job is to narrate without turning the narrative into a cage. The ledger. Tired of our human restraint, wrote a smaller line at the page bottom, a reservation kept is not a failure. It is a promise with stamina. Tape that refuses to loop be 30 should have been a clean loop. Heartbeat, audit, wait, acknowledgement, close. On playback, the reel refused to loop. After the minute ended, the tape stopped 6 seconds early, though it had more leader to give. When I hand wound it, the oxide felt smooth, as if the minute had ironed creases out of sound. I wrote on the box, B30 loop refused good, and shelved it above the slot. The ledger stamped the carton, a habit we now indulge. Open file do not close. The red pencil ruler formalized the red line into a rule and wrote it on the manual protocol sheet in small print no auditor will read. Red pencil rule. Draw a red line where a name could be written. Do not write the name. When tempted, underline the line. We did not test it. Rules that have to be tested don't deserve capitals. The map grows Curtisized chalk map on tile evolved on its own. The X remained 3 squares from the chair. A thin curve appeared between X and seat, a suggested path that kept clear of the slot's mouth. The curve acknowledged a truth I had been pretending not to know. The drawer is not a door. It is a border. The subject had been keeping to edges out of courtesy. We added nothing. We erased nothing. Delio swept around the curve with a choreography that would have embarrassed him to call dance. The ledger added, subject keeps to borders. Room approves. The restore team's second attempt declined. At noon, digital services returned because that is what services do. We think we can rebuild the index header, the lead said. It'll give you a title field at least. It will give us a place to betray restraint. I said, we can leave it blank. Barlow smiled the smile that has escorted agencies out of rooms since before there were agencies. We already have a blank, he said, tapping the red line. It behaves better than your form. They asked for a second imaging pass. The ledger turned the page by itself and exposed the shadow index. The lead read the line delete for cause now amended to reservation active and recognized the look of policy older than budgets. Wheel, monitor, he said, and meant it as surrender. They left us another barcode. Orton stuck it to the bottom of the degausser cart where it could learn modesty, index of emissions and the bill they pay no letter names for the subject shape only low rise. No digital title field the red line suffices. No photographs of the minute refusals filed under visual, inadmissible. No publication of the manual protocol internal use. Windows do not scale. No note about the precious syllables in public logs. Omit to protect arrival from our appetite. Emissions pay the bill for privacy. Rooms with debts get loud. Ours is rich and quiet. Working conclusions hardened external restore yields only furniture a stub, a red line never a subject. The room prevents invention by PRE redacting. The red line is policy disguised as drawing, a space preserved from language. Minute hygiene matters. Scrub attention. Leave courtesy. Then the window keeps itself. The name approaches as shape and pressure, not letters. Letters will be theft until the room lends them. A reservation that persists is not failure. It is stamina, a promise practiced daily until arrival agrees to be a verb. Barlow underlined stamina and drew a small chair next to it. Orton scratched a notch into the cabinet rail at knee height, one more tally in a class where the homework is patience. Delio nodded once at nothing, and that nothing felt kept, cover slip prepared. Not sent Nightroom cold storage unit D7 Sable drawer file 002 reservation window for 12 daily manual protocol available during outages seat, present, border respected, map provided by chalk 3 tiles, curve Clark, local at for 13, building in pulse, subject self ACK loud, name, known to room as shape low rise, letters refused by policy rule, red pencil underline. Never fill status, open do not close. We slid the slip behind the arrival form again. Where paper waits without sulking, after action. What will take into the final part, we end this section with a corridor that has learned to hold without hoarding, a drawer ajar by a finger's width, a chair that remembers weight without bragging, a badge content to imprint paper and not doors, a manual protocol with one red line we will not cross. The restore team has a report. We have a minute. Tomorrow we begin the last movement to see whether a reservation can become an encounter without letters, whether acknowledgement loops can retire gracefully, whether a building can teach its humans to be witnesses instead of collectors. If the subject arrives, we will not name them. If they do not, we will leave the line red and the seat clean. Either way, the file stays open. When the drawer breathes, the last ledger margins, and courtesy as evidence classification, internal restricted access repository, Nightroom cold storage. Unit D7 Sable Drawer Field Agent milliliters. J. Hail Credential 4CTY Date of Continuation 10 November Year Withheld Associated Tape Reels B31 B33. Subject Deleted File Incident Auxiliary Instruments Ledger Clothbound. Whisper Active Model 33 Teletype Emboss Only. Onion Skin Box 9 Brass Brads Badge Access All Auth None Sealed. Degausser Card Obedient Chalk Dust Curve Intact. Patience that rehearses endings without announcing Thempty Drawer Breathosat for 09 The corridor inhaled. Not a metaphor air pressure shifted. Paper lifted at corners. Brad heads gleamed with condensation. The drawer of slot 002, usually flush since its alignment, shifted outward a centimeter. Then inward again with the rhythm of a chest. It's breathing, Barlow said. Voice low as he'd use in a library where the books resent coughs. Drawers don't inhale, Orton muttered, but he held his hat against his chest like respect had forced him polite. A T for 12. When the minute declared itself, the chair accepted weight as it always had. But the drawer matched out in, once more like lungs learning a body. The ledger wrote without me, subject, breath proxy status, arrival imminent not yet entered. We did not touch the handle. Hands near breathing things are either medicine or murder. The last ledger margins are where buildings gossip. The ledger, usually strict about column and line, began populating its outer edge with whispers, faint words so pale they resembled erasure more than ink. Paper holds breath longer than lungs, names are weight spelled out, clerks are courtesies with shoes. I traced one line with a fingernail. Letters darkened as though pressure made them braver. Auden frowned. Margins are for readers, not for rooms, Barlow corrected him. Margins are where books admit they like being read. Delio bent, broom braced against tile, and said nothing. Silence was his margin. We decided not to transcribe. Some gossip is safest when left to the edges. Tape B31, the exhale B31 captured a sound that does not exist in air, an exhale made of metal. Frequency analysis suggested vibration of steel rails, 37 Hz, low enough to rattle teeth. But it also carried formants like vowels language imitating respiration. When played back in the corridor, the drawer aligned itself, flush. As if the tape's echo embarrassed it into posture, the ledger stamped the box. Exhale accepted playback counts as ACK.SO tapes now counted as Clark's. We added B31 to the audit log as if it were a person. Delio nodded at the reel, the same nod he'd give a coworker leaving early, but not irresponsibly. Courtesy as evidence you have evidence enough to embarrass an archive. Ledgers whispering. Tapes breathing, photographs refusing. But courtesy itself has become the most convincing proof. A T for 13 Delio nodded. He always nods. But this time the corridor nodded back, not visibly, not with sound, but with the subtle shift of light across tile. A return gesture. Barlow whispered, courtesy is evidence. Orton scowled. Evidence that can't be subpoenaed is just rumor, but the ledger contradicted him with a line written bold, courtesy equals acknowledgement. Acknowledgement equals file active. This was no rumor. It was policy, embossed in graphite. The badge refuses exit. We attempted to remove the badge from the corridor entirely, escorted it up to flights, sealed it in a safe meant for coins and contracts. At for 12, during the window, the envelope appeared back on the cabinet beside slot 002. Not open. Not dramatic. Just back. The teletype, smug, embossed, badge is a witness. Witnesses stay. So we stopped trying. Some objects choose jurisdiction. The map extensor chalk map's curve lengthened, from the X3 tiles away now all the way past the chair, looping gently toward the stair where Delio stands. Not a demand, not an arrow, just a suggestion, like a hand gesturing, come with me. Delio saw it, swept once across the curve, then stopped mid-motion. He left the chalk unbroken. His broom leaned against the rail like a flag of truce. The ledger added, subject invites Clark to walk. We didn't ask him if he would. The drawer's silence at dawn. The drawer stopped breathing. Flush again, inert, bureaucratic. Auden sighed with relief. Drawers should store, not inhale. But Barlow disagreed. Even silence has memory. It will remember breathing next time. The ledger's margin whispered, breath returns when courtesy allows. We left it alone. Working theory near and file 002 is no longer deleted. It is waiting, lungs rehearsing. Breath through furniture is how arrival begins body by proxy. Courtesy itself is recordable. Nods answered, badges refusing exit, margins gossiping. The subject is imminent but not impatient. We are being trained for recognition, not spectacle. Final courtesy may decide whether arrival chooses to stay, the corridor as witness, final audit, and the file that refused to classification, internal restricted access repository, Nightroom cold storage. Unit D7 Sable Drawer Field Agent Milliliters. J. Hail Credential 4CTY Date of Continuation 12 November Year withheld associated tape reels B30 for B36. Subject Deleted file incident auxiliary instruments Ledger clothbound. Whisper active Model 33 teletype emboss only. Badge access all auth none resident. Onion skin box 9 chalk curve intact. Brass brads, chair faithful, patience spent. But reporting for duty the corridor as witness sat for 12, the corridor itself became clerk. Not the chair, not the badge, not the ledger, not as the walls. The paint blushed. Plaster tightened. Floor tiles hummed in sympathetic geometry. A pulse radiated not from furniture but from foundation. Delio nodded, late this time. The corridor nodded back before him. He lowered his broom like a flag. The ledger, uncharacteristically concise, stamped a single line, a CK Clark corridor. For the first time since file 002 appeared, Delio smiled without apology. I'm promoted, he said. My replacement's the hallway. Tape B34, the whisper Twyeth reel recorded overlapping frequencies, human breath, structural creak, badge vibration, draw rails all stacked into what analysis software misread as choral harmony. Played back at half speed, it resembled plain chant, but without words, only vowels migrating like birds that forgot migration patterns. Barlow listened twice, then shut the player. That's not for us, he said. That's rehearsal. We shelved the tape unlabeled. The ledger labeled it anyway. Across the carton's spine, promise practice. The final audit first draft, the ledger filled a page without permission. Head to foot, file 002 status, reservation active indefinite subject, unentered shape to syllable. Low-rise acknowledgements, Clark local, Clark room, Clark corridor. Clark duplicate, retired, Clark tape. Clark badge rules, no invention. No names, red pencil line events, outage, restore attempt, map, breath, courtesy emissions, all approved outcome, promise kept at the bottom margin. In letters darker than ink should allow, do not close. The ledger shut itself with a noise like a verdict. The badge at last we found the badge no longer restless. Envelope flat, flap aligned, laminate dim. Its weight felt less like defiance and more like conclusion. The teletype embossed one last message, witness duty completed. Remaining a symbol only, we filed the badge inside the ledger's annex. Between onion skin blanks, paper welcomed plastic without complaint. The drawer refuses exit at dawn. I tried the handle of slot 002. Not to open, only to test courtesy. It resisted, not locked, not jammed, refused. Like a polite hand raised, not yet. Orton tugged once, shrugged. Good drawers know when to stay closed, Barlow whispered, or when to wait for who belongs. We wrote nothing more. Tape B35, the silence kept the reel captured 30 seconds of absolute silence, not digital nothing. Not tape hiss muted, but silence with texture. Analysis found micro-variations in oxide that spelled patterns like stitches, small repeating loops that resembled C. Clark's mark, signed by absence. We labeled the box B35 Clark's signature silence. The ledger refused to stamp it. Perhaps silence does not require ink. The corridor's gift hat for 12 the following night. No wait came, no knock, no breath. Only the map on the floor changed. The chalk curve thickened into a circle around the chair. A boundary, a crown, a courtesy. Delio stepped just outside it, broom at rest. That's the gift, he said. They left us a circle. The ledger stamped a note across the margin. Gift accepted. The red line closeted on the onion skin. The red line at last extended itself. Where it once demanded restraint, it now doubled one line above, one line below, enclosing blankness like a frame. Still no letters, still no theft. Only protection. Barlow pointed at it. The room signed our refusal. We filed it under end papers. The subject's courtesy last minute of B36 captured 3 knocks air against air, courteous as introduction. The knocks did not ask entrance. They acknowledged our waiting. The ledger translated with mercy. Subject recognizes stewardship. No arrival. No spectacle. Recognition alone. Closing notes filed but not concluded. The file began as deleted. It became reservation. It trained us with duplicates, skipped windows, outages, maps, and red lines. It taught us to equate courtesy with audit, silence with record, absence with stamina. The subject remains unentered, but their courtesy entered fully. Barlow said, some promises never cash out. They just earn interest. Auden said, better a waiting file than a closed one. Delio nodded. The corridor nodded back. We did not close the file. Final ledger stamp.